Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Office Hours with the Professor. As always, I'm your host, William the Professor Collis, and I am super excited for this week's news story, so let's dive right in. We're going to talk about evil geniuses having two CSGO rosters competing in the exact same tournament. And if you don't think that this news story is a potentially big deal or interesting, we're going to get there. But first, let's lay out the facts. So the tournament itself is Fragadelphia. And you might wonder, well, why does evil geniuses have so many CSGO pro players that they can, submit to rosters? And the answer is, this is an outgrowth of a new strategy Evil Geniuses is employing called the Blueprint. The idea being to sign way more pros than you might need to compete in a particular game so that you can have roster fluidity to swap people in and out, but also so you can rest players between events. Evil Geniuses has acquired legacy rosters, including Carpe Diem and Party Astronauts, and the two teams that are competing in this event are sort of composed of those players. Obviously, the CSGO community is in a little bit of an uproar about this, citing potential conflict of interest. In traditional sports like baseball, you don't have two Red Sox teams competing in a league. And there is some precedent for this, for sort of banning two teams from the same organization in CSGO. ESL used to have a rule that prevented academy teams, for example, from competing in the same tournaments as their parent rosters. So those are the facts. Let's get into this. Now, first of all, I should say that it seems like Evil Geniuses coordinated with the tournament organizers and got their approval to submit both rosters. And, they've sort of said, look, there's no conflict of interest. There's nothing untoward. There's no collusion. We wouldn't let that happen. This is very above board here. And I want to get right out that I 100% believe that. I don't think that Evil Geniuses plans to collude with these rosters, right? I think that's absurd. They don't need to. They're a tier 1 org, right? Among other things. And I fully believe that the tournament organizers, also believe that's the case, right? The problem here is not the potential to collude or the potential conflict of interest. The problem here is the appearance of conflict of interest, right? So let's use an example here. Let's say that the two Evil Genius rosters do face each other, and for tiebreaker reasons, one roster really needs to go, 3-0, right? Whereas the other roster doesn't matter how they perform, they're gonna get through. All of a sudden, that roster that Evil Geniuses has that really needs to go 3-0 does go 3-0. They sweep the other team. Now, take it as a given that there was nothing untoward happening in this series, right? The players played their hardest, everyone tried their best, and the team that needed to win 3-0 really did win 3-0. The problem is, even if we know this is true, there's still an appearance of something going wrong, right? People in the community will still doubt that match outcome and say, well, did that player really play the hardest? Come on, it's so suspicious that the one time they needed a 3-0, they got it, right? And that will in turn damage the reputation of Evil Geniuses, the evil of their pros, the reputation of their pros, and the reputation of the tournament organizer as a whole. And this really more broadly is one of the big reasons why you're not allowed to field multiple rosters in traditional sports. It's because even if you are so certain that you can run an organization such that there isn't conflict, that the incentives are structured in such a way that your players wouldn't do something untoward, the appearance of it is in some ways more powerful than the actual actions themselves. And no one wants a clout like that hanging over their tournament, their organization, or their players, and so people avoid it. I'd also point out, though, that there are sort of other problems with potentially allowing two rosters to compete. The first piece is just how interesting is it to players, or to viewers, sorry. Like, take this to its logical conclusion. If every esports event I watch is Evil Genius roster number 2 versus Evil Genius roster number 7, it's not really a tournament anymore, right? There's something about the viewership experience that presupposes you want to be crowning different champions. Also, think about it from an organizational perspective. If this approach the Evil Geniuses has works and both rosters do well, why not go to 3 rosters? Why not go to 4 or 5 or 6, right? The logical extension of this strategy is if you can field more rosters, do field more rosters because you have a better and better chance of success in every tournament. That seems like it's a problem as a whole for esports organizations and an incredible cost driver in the industry as well, something we would probably like to avoid, wouldn't you agree? So I want to be crystal clear as I come to sort of the outcome of this story. I really don't fault Evil Geniuses here at all. I think if the tournament organizer allows it, they should do it, right? They've signed all these pros. They clearly need to amortize their salaries somehow. They can get 2 rosters in the event, go for it. But I think the tournament organizer should have really considered this precedent more carefully. Because I think even if it doesn't cause a problem today, it opens a door for other organizations to do it, and eventually it will. And it's very, very hard to put the genie back in the bottle. If you allow one top-tier org to do this, other orgs will be able to say, why not me? So overall, I give this story an I for incomplete, because I really expect that there to be some statement coming from the tournament organizer saying, hey, we've given them permission this one time, but we're not going to allow it in future, and we should have thought more about this. I think there's more developments here, because as I said, I think this trend is potentially problematic and potentially reputationally damaging for the parties involved, and, you know, a potentially negative trend for esports overall. So thank you so much for listening to this week's Office Hours, and I look forward to covering another news story with you next week.